This video is going to be looking at some of the things that you're going to need to know about the drive shaft, which if you have a 62C deck or if you have a lot of the earlier things like from a 425, 45, or 55, this is going to be very similar. The drive shaft I have here is actually off the 48C or 62-inch deck on the 455. The way this is supposed to operate, this is actually the drive shaft out of the transmission. You can see there's a ring here, and what this is going to do, that's where the balls in the coupler are going to lock onto this shaft. Okay, when you push the drive shaft in, it should snap like that. What that has done is now release those balls to where they're going to be holding the drive shaft onto this PTO shaft. To release it, all you need to do is pull the coupler back and it actually pops out. And this is something that, if you're removing a drive shaft, what you want to do is just pull back on this collar and then slide it off. You don't have to hold it. If your drive shaft coupler has been lubricated and is working properly, you shouldn't need to do anything more. And there it's snapped on. When you go to reinstall it, what it's going to do is actually you slide it in, and this is like an automatic lock that's going to lock it onto this PTO drive shaft. And when I pull it out, it actually pops out. So this is something that with the drive shafts, getting this drive shaft coupler to work properly is very important. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult. You're laying underneath the tractor, trying to get it off, and it's not something that's going to be very easy. So what you need to make sure is this is cleaned up and lubricated, and I'll be explaining that next. Okay, this is the inside of this coupler ring, and what actually is going to be releasing the two balls, which are going to allow you to pull it off, is this is going to hold the two balls in place, and when you push it back, this is going to allow those two balls to roll in this area here, this groove, and you can actually see that there's a lot of rust and crud and corrosion in there, and this is after I've washed it with carburetor cleaner, and I've wiped it out a half a dozen times. And this is why, if you're not able to get that off, you can't pull your coupler off. What it's doing is these balls are not, actually going to be coming back and seating in this groove, or else there's too much debris in there. And so this would be where you want to really, clean this good. And I probably should actually take a little emery paper and go in there and clean some of that rust off. And I believe this is where you're seeing a lot of the times where you can pull the coupler back, but it won't release. What's happening is the balls can't go into this groove here because there's too much grease and foreign matter in there. You need to actually clean that as good as you can. The way you want to assemble this is I drop that little metal ring inside, and then you're going to need to put this spring clip in. To reinstall the coupler, what I've done here is this is the washer that I had to bend, and what I did is just put it on an anvil took a hammer and straightened it out. And you want to have the coil side where it's the tight coil against the washer, and that's what's going to be providing even pressure against that washer. Then you'll just be sliding on the coupler. I've already got all the lock rings and everything inside here. I'll slide this coupler on and then secure it with this snap ring. So it's just a matter of I'm going to push it on, get those coils inside, and then when this comes out here, I'll have that snap ring and I'll put it on there. There's some other maintenance you probably should be doing, and this shaft, the square shaft that's going into the other section of the drive shaft, this should be loose enough so that it pulls in and out easily. And I've seen a lot of these where there's so much grease on it you can't remove it. To disassemble this, you need a 3/16 Allen head or Allen wrench, and this is an Allen head bolt. And I have one of these other ones here that came off another machine, and I was looking for that bolt that's supposed to go in there. Went to John Deere Parts, and they don't have it. And I eventually did take this apart on another one and found out it's a 1/4 NC20, and that means it's a 1/4 inch. NC is a national coarse thread, 20 is the threads per inch, and this one is a 1/4 inch long, which I didn't have too good a luck finding it, but somebody else, did find this. If you go to John Deere, they won't have the part number, but you can order it. It's basically just a standard bolt. It's not metric. It's actually an SAE type of cap screw. There also is a grease zerk on here, which you want to lubricate this. If this gets too loose and is too worn, the drive shaft is actually going to wobble. So that's something that that could damage your bearings in the gear case, and it also could, cause a problem with your PTO shaft with the bearing there. When you take this out, there's a little knob on here that you have to align so that when that screw goes in, it's going to be catching on this little knob here, and that's what prevents it from coming out any further. So that's something that, taking it apart isn't that hard if you got the drive shaft off, and just go ahead and, clean that shaft up. Okay, as far as the bearings in the U-joints, this one is loose. So these bearings, should be replaced. If you don't, it's eventually going to be a problem. And you can buy the bearings. I think John Deere has them online, but you can also, I got these from Napa, and basically you're going to be buying something like this. Take the old cross and bearing caps into Napa, and they should be able to get you a proper part for that. And I've done this before, and I didn't make a video, but if enough people think that they might need it, it's not that hard to do, but you just need a little information on how to do it. Okay, the reason you're doing all this work and spending all this time on this drive shaft is the new drive shaft is going to cost you between $500 and $600. And if you do a little maintenance, this coupler here, clean it up, these should last a lot longer. So this one here, like I said, has a bad bearing, and that's something that can be replaced. When I was going to grease this, I noticed the grease zerk here is broken off. And that's something that, when you have a grease gun and you try to put it on, a grease zerk, a lot of times it's too tight and you go to get it off and you can actually break these. Not many people know that the grease zerk end here is knurled. And that's so you can, get your fingers on there and turn it. When these are new, they're not going to go on as easy. After they've been used a while, they get a little worn. But at first, you might want to just take and loosen them up, and then if it starts leaking grease, then you tighten it up a little bit so that it's not going to, break the tip when you try to take it off. I like a little gun like this. This is what I use for greasing the universal joints on the tractor. Rather than using a big heavy gun like this, I use this when I want to, grease the pivot points in the front, on the steering, and it's going to be a little heavier. While I'm underneath the tractor, I like to have the lighter grease gun. Okay, I also have another grease gun like this, and this is a lever action. With lever action, you get a lot more pressure, and this develops like 10,000 pounds of pressure. So on my loaders, a lot of times I like this because with the straight metal pipe, it's easy to get onto the fittings of the loader. As far as what you're going to use as far as grease, grease does have ratings just like motor oil, and the grease that's recommended has a rating NLGI number 2. And that stands for National Lubricating Grease Institute number 2. Number 2 is the thickness of the grease. There's number 1, number 2. Number 2 is going to be the most common. Okay, then there's going to be another code on here, GCLB. GC, again, is a rating, and that it's either A, B, or C. A is for light duty, B is for medium duty, C is for heavy duty, and most grease today is a GC. LB is a chassis lube, and so this grease is rated for, basically for using it as a extreme pressure grease, which is a term they use now, and it's something that rating on grease that I got from Walmart is the same as this Lucas Red and Tacky. The Red and Tacky is a little stickier, and I bought some of that. I'm going to be trying it. It's just something that, as long as it has the right rating, John Deere has their grease, and it's going to maybe have some more additives, but it's actually more than what you need. The GCLB is what John Deere recommends for greasing mowers, U-joints, and other equipment. For the little grease gun that I have here, I bought this green grease. And the main reason I bought it is you can't get these little tubes. You know, there are not very many manufacturers that actually do that. So I bought these little tubes, and they work, and my little gun works fine. I'm looking at this, and it is a NLGI number 2 grease, which that's very good. This grease does not carry a rating. This grease was not rated, and even though they're claiming it's a extreme pressure waterproof grease, it hasn't been tested. So that's something that, you know, when you buy cheaper grease, this was actually pretty expensive too, grease, but you need to make sure that it does have the right rating to make sure you're not getting cheap grease. And number 1 grease is going to be thinner and not be as good for like wheel bearings and universal joints, although you can buy that. So these are just some things that, you know, when you buy grease, you don't have to get the biggest, most expensive, you know, one. You can get something from Walmart, and it's going to be adequate. So this video was basically, in the last video I had, I didn't go into replacing this coupler over here, and so that's why I came back and did this video. And then I thought, well, I'll go ahead and add something here about, you know, doing the greasing and a little information on that. So for now, this is all I have, but if there's anything else you'd like to see a video on, just put it in the comments and I'll see what I can do. And that's all for now.